Take us away.
What are your thoughts on the Flames owners now examining CalgaryNEXT?
Well, this is not really anything new because when this came to council a month or two ago, part of council's recommendation was to work on a plan B, a specific plan B, with the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Group. I'm happy they're willing to come to the table on that. It was very, very clear that in the last report to council that the CalgaryNEXT proposal in West Village faces incredibly high, if not insurmountable hurdles. So the Flames Group will be back with us in a conversation later this month, and we'll have a chance to talk both about their response to our thoughts on CalgaryNEXT, as well as a potential plan B. I will say that the letter that the Calgary Sports and Entertainment Group sent to seasons ticket holders did not actually refute the city's assertions on the cost of Plan B. They just said, the city should spend that money anyway. It's $1.8 billion. That money does not exist. So if it's $1.8 billion and there's no refutation of that cost, it's hard for me to see how that proposal could go forward.
In that letter, was he firm on the cost of the $809?
He wasn't actually. He said the rest of the cost is someone else's problem. Well, it's all the same taxpayer.
When it comes to medical marijuana centers,
oh my goodness gracious.
So there is apparently legislation coming up from the federal government to decriminalize. What does what you guys did today have to do? What's that going to happen?
It is incredibly related and not related at all. So medical marijuana is currently legal. However, the previous federal government really did not do a good job on helping figure out how to dispense that product. And in fact, I used to receive letters from then Health Minister Ambrose, which would say, we don't want to do this at all, and this is how to do it. Like, it just didn't make any sense. And so clearly we've had a court decision saying it didn't make any sense, which has really left the cities holding the bag on this. And we've seen some very serious problems with shifts from counseling centers to dispensaries, which are illegal, in places like Vancouver and Toronto, and this is really our attempt to get ahead of that. This will not be the final regulation. Once the federal government puts forth its regulations, and we'll be advocating very hard with them that they have to think of things like land use and zoning, this will change. But we thought it was important to clamp down now so that we didn't have a proliferation as we've seen in other cities.
So it was getting a rough ride during debate. What made people go to the pro side to accept these regulations? What was it in that debate that made people turn around?
It was my brilliant argument upon leaving the chair, obviously. I think what happened was that council recognized that these are not perfect, but as we heard from the Calgary Police Service, it might be better to overshoot the target a little bit now and then pull back later rather than to put the cap on the bottle once the genie is out.
You mentioned when you left the chair that your own perspective had changed a bit from discussing this issue with other big city mayors. What was it about their experience that made you change your mind?
Exactly as I've just described, that it's not right for me to equate counseling for medical marijuana with medical marijuana dispensaries. They're not the same thing. But I do think that even though I hate slippery slope arguments, there is a bit of a slippery slope here. And if we don't manage the counseling piece very well, we'll find ourselves with an out-of-control dispensary situation, which is what happened in Toronto.
Is there much concern about the lights, about the look of it? Can that be controlled like you've done today?
Well, part of our job as a city government is to manage land use and to figure out what kinds of retail environments are right in what kinds of neighborhoods and what kinds of streets. We do that every day. And in fact, yesterday we had a big confusing argument about liquor stores and whether we had inadvertently created a rule where you could have 2 liquor stores in one parking lot. And so we do this all the time, and this is just a new form of retail / medical use that we don't really have a regulatory regimen for.
So because now a development permit is required, does that mean signage can be controlled?
That is right.
And are you trying to prevent, could you have a payday loan medical counseling center, payday loan medical counseling center? Will this prevent that?
It should help to do that. Liquor stores, medical. It's not saying you can't have a medical marijuana center next to a liquor store, but it is saying you can't have 2 medical marijuana centers or 2 liquor stores in the same radius. So it should help us control that a little bit.
Look at red lots. Is this too much of a future look, too far down the road? Or?
It feels a little far for me. because I'm having two sides of my brain warring with themselves. The one side says we ought not to be starting stuff like this until we've got a full regional transit strategy in place, and we're only just now starting the pilot program with communities to the south, the on-end transit system. On the other hand, I do like experimentation. And, you know, if these things are relatively easy to put up and try, especially if they're carpool lots, maybe we should try. But we'll continue this discussion as the regional transit piece becomes a bit more clear.
What would the city's requirements be in terms of money? Like as a partner, or is it
I don't think we'd be particularly willing to pour any money into this, but I think we could figure out ways that we could do this in a way that it would be cost recovery. That would be my guess.
And is there any preference in terms of getting to the last LRT park and ride, or sorry, the last LRT stop, or downtown shopping?
Certainly last LRT solves the problem that we're deliberately considering, which is the proliferation of out-of-town transit users at the ends of the lines.